From WOWT6, this is Heartland Focus. From WOWT6, this is Heartland Focus.
Good morning and welcome to Heartland Focus. It's been a while since I've been on. We've been really doing right by COVID-19, and so we thought it to be safe to come back, and so here I am. We have in front of us some very serious matters and situations and topics that we're going to try to address this morning and in the future. And my guest is Dr. Aldi Poor from the Douglas County Health Department. Thank you, Dr. Poor, for coming on.
Thank you, Tim, for having me here.
Yes, yes. And you were on actually before we transitioned out due to COVID-19, just trying to get things to kind of calm down, keep that curve down. You were on talking about some proactive things that we can do. Before we jump into some other things, kind of like just at a high level, give us the kind of the state of the union for the county as it relates to COVID-19 in this area.
Good, glad to do it. You know, we look at the data every day, and what we have seen last week and now also this week, we are potentially at kind of a positivity rate around 10%. And that has come down. We used to be 13, 14%. So the last 2 weeks, and I hope also this week, by the end of this week, will be down a few points every time. So that's good news.
Okay.
The other thing that is really good news, but I have to share with you too, we still have potentially every day 100 new cases.
Okay.
So that means we still have transmission in our community. What we also have seen over the last 2 weeks is that our hospitalization is going down. Individuals with COVID-19 in hospitals has really decreased. We are today at around 110 individuals in Omaha hospitals, whereby at the end of last month, 2-3 weeks ago, we were at 161. So a nice downturn there. We also are looking at how many of these patients have been on ventilators, where we used to be around 49, 50. We are now down to 30.
Okay.
So that's all pretty good, but that means, you know, I'm really concerned that now we are releasing some of the restrictions, that we do not forget the virus is still in Douglas County.
Yeah. Now talk a little bit about, I keep hearing in terms of just the need to do more testing. That you know, some folks feel that we're just not penetrating some of the most vulnerable populations. The awareness is not there, or something, we're not going deep enough. I don't know what it is, but kind of talk to that a little bit. How can we, and should people be proactively trying to get tested?
So testing is an important factor in all of this, because only either you have symptoms and you go to your healthcare provider and you get tested that way. But we know that about 20% of individuals are asymptomatic. So they have no symptoms, and they go around, and then the symptoms start, and they probably are going to their healthcare provider. Well, that time they have already been spreading the virus. So testing is really important. We do have more testing opportunities in this community, but I really would encourage, we are testing about 8% of our entire population in Douglas County at this time. I would encourage people, there are plenty of opportunities to get tested. Please take those opportunities.
So we're testing about 8%. Where would you like, I mean, in terms of just, I mean, would you like, what would be a comfort level where you, okay, a penetration, we need 15%, 20%?
You know, that is hard to say, Tim. What I would like to see more testing, but and our positivity rate really going down. I would like to see our positivity rate down to 5%.
Okay.
You can decrease the cases by doing less testing, because if we do not test, we are not finding individuals. But testing is so important to actually prevent the transmission, and that's why it is important.
So if we ramp up the testing and we be able to identify more people that are positive, do we have systems in place to therefore, because testing is, once you identify somebody, they test positive, then the work starts of tracking, tracing, treating. So talk about that a little bit, because people, you know, when less tests, you don't really know in terms of just how the population is affected. And so are we prepared to do the tracking, the tracing, and all that good stuff?
I can tell you we are prepared. We have internally in the department, we have trained some individuals. Now they have to go back to their regular job, like restaurant inspections and so on. So now we have actually, the governor has developed contracts with a local company, PRC, which is a local company that we know very well because they do community needs assessment. We have trained there. They have potentially 200 individuals who can do contact tracing that work very closely with our staff. State of Nebraska Health and Human Services also has a group of individuals down there. So contact tracing is really important and needs to happen as quickly as possible when we get those positive test results, so we can identify, is this person related to a cluster or is this community acquired? We cannot determine where they are coming in place. So I would say, yes, we have the infrastructure in place to do it.
Yeah, and that's, and really, for the individuals out there, Dr. Poor, that may be a little bit hesitant to go get this test, what can you say to calm those nerves and anxiety? I've been tested twice and been negative both times, but what would you say to calm some nerves?
Well, so you know exactly what it means. I have been tested
but see,
twice.
I see you've been tested too, so I'll give my perspective, give yours, and because sometimes, you know, it's kind of like, you know, me saying it, I'm not the official, you know, authority in it, but I'll give your perspective, then I'll share in terms of my experience.
You know, I would say it really depends. The first time was actually was nothing. I thought the second time, yeah, it was a little bit uncomfortable, but it's gone in a second. And it was, for me, worth the risk or worth the little pain I felt than to know, have I been infected and potentially infect others, potentially vulnerable people, you know. So that's, I think, what we need to consider. And I would say nobody should shy away because they think it is uncomfortable.
And so, you know, so if people, they're not having no symptoms and they just want to get tested to get the, you know, the freedom of mind knowing that I do not have it, there's nothing preventing them from going to get that test now.
There's nothing preventing them. You know, there's Test Nebraska. They can fill out the assessment online. There are 2 federally qualified health centers who have plenty of tests available that they are not fully using at this time. We have a new drive-through site on 50th and G, where every day 300 tests are going to be performed.
Wow. So they can, our community sites, so Charles Drew Health Center, One World Community Health Center, and then the other 2 sites that you talked about.
The 50th and G.
50th and G.
Test Nebraska is still, I think, at the CHI Center.
And I think I know Charles Drew, they can just, you know, give them a call and they'll set up an appointment that they can go. I don't know if there's these other ones. I think all of them do. You have to call. It's not just show up and.
You know, on the 50th and G side, you actually can just drive through. It's easier if you do a little registration first. But you can just go there and see. You may have to wait a little bit.
So we're going to take a break, and then let's talk about. There's a little bit of you know, tugging and pulling in terms of this whole thing of wearing a mask. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to take a break. And because all the way from the White House to community-based. I think there's some things that we need to deal with, because this is a tool to help prevent the spread. And so let's talk about that a little bit when we come back. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to do a deep dive into this whole notion that racism, it being a public health crisis. And we'll give you some more tips in terms of COVID-19, how to prevent the spread. Stay with me. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Heartland Focus. My guest is Dr. Poore. She is the Director of Health for Douglas County Health Department. Thank you so much for taking the time. You're extremely busy doing the work. I appreciate that. And as we jump in, we will not have time, so you've got to commit to come back, because these subjects that we're talking about, it takes time. We got to take time to do the deep dives. But one of the things that we talked about is testing in the last segment. And one of the things I challenge us to do is we have to move the testing to where the people are. When you look at some of our challenged populations or most vulnerable population, Omaha Housing Authority, people that are confined, we gotta figure out a way. We're too smart and too innovative, and the resources to find how we get to the people. So I don't know if you wanna just ponder on that and come back to me later on, but whatever I can do to drive home that message is we can't wait. We gotta move and get more people tested in some of those most vulnerable areas.
I would really like for somebody to step forward and say, we'll do the testing, because that's really what it needs. We can potentially get them the test, but you need people who are comfortable in wearing PPE and then administering the test, and use a system for registration and transfer of data.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit teamwork.
So it's easier said than done, but I have confidence in terms of our community health centers, One World, Charles Drew, and maybe we get some of these hospitals to step up and create some greater resources so you can have qualified people doing the testing in some of our most challenged areas. And that's Methodist, Nebraska Health Systems, CHI, CHI, and so we can do this. And so if you're out there listening, you know, we can do this. Let's get it done. We're talking about saving lives. And so I think with that, you got to remove politics, remove all of the minutia that stop you from doing right by people, right?
I agree.
Okay, all right, so now let's save some more lives. So let's mask. This whole thing from the president to the state, to our governors, to everybody is, it's like almost missed messages that we're sending out there. Do we wear the dang thing or do we not? What from your perspective, you know, leading the organization in terms of Douglas County Health, what is your take on the mask?
From a public health standpoint, and actually we all know this is a respiratory virus.
Okay.
It's transferred by the particulates that you are expiring when you talk, when you sing, when you shout. So I think every reasonable person is going to think that a face covering is going to help you from spreading those particulates, and therefore protect the next person who is over there closer than 6 feet, and you are...
I'm just going to demonstrate while you're talking.
You are exactly exhaling the particles into the air. There are now study after study who show that wearing a face mask, wearing a face covering is protective. has an effect on the virus. It's not the only thing. Social distancing is another. Hand washing is another. So we have to layer all these things together.
Okay, so let's just demonstrate. So I'm demonstrating the mask, and tell me if you can tell me if I do it right. Okay, so you didn't see me put it on, but let's see if I can take it off correctly. So the mask is on, and really the outer part of the mask is so important in terms of that you don't contaminate your hands. So I'm going from the back here. I'm gonna take it off like this, and I'm gonna fold it inside, and then I can put it away from here.
In a plastic bag.
In a plastic bag. Okay, okay. Yeah. Now with the...
And then you wash your hands.
Then I wash my hands. So let's demonstrate. Either you can sing the song or I can sing.
You sing.
Okay,
I wash.
Okay. So what I did wrong was, see, I did this. I shouldn't have done this.
Yes.
I should have done that.
Washed
I should have washed hands first. So let's wash your hands. I have a very capable, our clock person is Phil Rooney. He's in the audience here. And so we're going to do 20 seconds of washing hands. You're going to wash your hands, and I'm going to sing a song for 20 seconds, okay? Here we go. Countdown. Give me a countdown. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Please don't take my sunshine away. Done. Okay, so I think I kind of did it probably 4 seconds over 20 seconds, but find a song and just sing that song. So washing your hands is not effective if you only wash your hands for 10 seconds or 5 seconds and done. It's about, you need that time to cause that, where it can be the friction, so you can wake up all those things and rub off all those things, those negative things that's that's on your hand. Okay, that's good. So we got that one. So now let's do this. You made a public announcement of stating that racism, and I know people they're still afraid of that word, and they're still afraid of having conversation about that. But you said racism is a public health crisis. Is a health crisis. Why did you say that? Why are you making that such a pointed thing to say right now?
So I just want to correct you slightly.
Okay.
It wasn't me who made that statement. It was a resolution that we put in front of our Board of Health.
Okay.
And the Board of Health adopted this resolution.
Okay. So it's the Board of Health, and so that's, and which you represent, and that organization. So the Board of Health made this resolution in terms of looking at racism as a public health crisis. Talk about that a little bit in terms of just what made that come to, and some of the pieces that's in there that we have to deal with.
So, Tim, we have worked on health disparities in this community for a long time. I think I may have come here. Every year I do the state of public health. And every year when we look at our health data, we are seeing disparities. We are seeing disparities in our minority community and so on. Be it life expectancy. Life expectancy in Douglas County is 10 years higher in the white population versus the African American population.
Wow.
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
That's crazy.
Infant mortality is another one. You know, a baby born to a white mom has a threefold higher chance to see the first birthday than a baby born to an African American mom. These are disparities. We have worked on this over time since I have been director, at least. You know, we are not making any progress. So what we are now looking at and saying, it is potentially social determinants of health that are underlying, that are some cause of
So
it.
social determinants of health, what is that?
Social determinants of health are your housing needs, potentially your environment that you are living in, is your education, is your workforce. Those all are is your poverty level. Those all are underlying and can influence your health outcome. And racism has been shown now by more than 100 studies that is also an underlying factor that causes worse health outcomes. And let me just share with you, because I can't tell you how many emails I have gotten over the last 2 days to say, racism, how can you say that? And I'm not a racist, and so on. There are several ways of understanding racism, and what we are saying here is not individual racism. It is structural, systemic racism that is underlying some of our policies and some of our programmings that give advantages and disadvantages to certain populations.
There you go.
That is what we mean by this.
Yeah.
Structural, systematic.
Yeah, yeah. And there is, I really commend the Board of Health for that resolution. And now the work, I think, Dr. Poor, I think we're at a different place where people are more willing to have the deeper conversations. So many times we just keep on the surface and we don't want to. It's hard to solve problems if you don't deal with the root causes in terms of social determinants of health and things like that. What chances are you feeling that we may be able to move towards real solutions? What are you feeling and see? Because you've been doing this for a while.
I'm always an optimist. So I do hope that we are kind of at a point where we could see some changes. But these are uncomfortable conversations that we need to have. And they are open conversation. I am also one from the privileged society. I need to have the conversation. I need to learn the history from African Americans. I need to see how did North Omaha, for example, look like many years ago. I need people to tell me stories so we can all learn from it and say, no, we don't want to repeat this again. I think we all need to get together and need to feel much more comfortable. I give great credit to the Chamber of Commerce, where 200 organizations have said we want to be more diverse in our community. So I think everything is kind of awakening up, and there's a good time to focus on this.
Well, hey, thank you so much. I got to take a break, and when we come back, we'll do some closing statements, okay? And we're going to take a short break statement with me, and I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to Heartland Focus. My guest, Dr. Poor, and I'm your host, Tim Clark. Hey, just real quick, we're running out of time, but I think it's so important. You cannot begin to heal and move forward unless you recognize what's wrong. So the Douglas County Health Department, they put a resolution saying racism is a public health crisis. Summarize that again for me.
Well, it's, as I have shared with you, Tim, we have seen these health disparities in our community. And so, and a lot of studies have shown that racism is really the underlying cause of some of the bad health outcomes. So we put this resolution together. We call it a crisis because by definition, a crisis needs to affect many people. it affects many people in
That's
our
right.
community. We have 71% whites, and the rest is minority community. And it has to have an effect on a long term. It can't just be a short term. Well, this has been going on for many, many years.
Well,
and
400 years.
Exactly. And we're not going to solve this
That's
in the
right.
next year or two. And there need to be bold solutions.
Bold solutions. I love it. Bold solutions. And I call it, there has to be a level of disruption of what is in place. And maybe not dismantling totally, or some people say defund the police department. I'm going to have the president of the union coming on the show, and hopefully Chief Smotter will be on the show. We're going to talk about what reform looks like, but it needs to be a disruption that will push us from being comfortable, because these subject matters, it forces us to be uncomfortable if we're going to get through it. But it has to still create bridges and not tear apart in terms of to get to it.
Correct. And I honestly think if we talk about systemic racism, we need to look more at policies. We need to review those policies with an equity lens.
That's right.
And only if you do it very systemic and very impactful are you going to get see any difference.
And I agree with you. And because right now, I think, in terms of my personal opinion, you have culture and practices leading policy, and which it should be a combination. For instance, police departments across this country, bad culture, bad practices, and not really following good policies and procedures. So I think it is a combination, but policy is important. It is important that we have Black people at the table. When you look at things that's happening, and a lot of the folks in all these systems, they say, what can we do? What can we do? Do business with Black people. Do more business. I think versus the outside in, we got to look more in terms of the inside out. Do more business with Black people. I hate that we're out of time, Dr. Ford. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. Hey, you guys, that's all the time I have. Make today the beginning of your best year yet. Go out there. I would say hug somebody, but feel somebody from afar. Do your dance to your beat, to your rhythm. But most of all, take the time to be good to yourself. It makes it so much easier to be good to others. Until next time, I'm out. Tim Clark, your host.